All right. Good morning, everyone. Thank you so much for joining us. What a wonderful way to spend a snowy morning, I think. My name is Christine Muir. I'm the community librarian at Cary Library. Um, Today's program is made possible by the generous donors to the foundation, so we thank them for their support. We are happy to be able to offer closed captioning now, both through Zoom and Otter AI. With Zoom, you can click on the live transcript button at the bottom of your screen and turn on subtitles or the full transcript if you'd like. And with Otter AI, you just have to click in the top left corner on the live button. I will put more detailed instructions in the chat in case anybody wants to take advantage of that. So today I'm very pleased to welcome cake artist Dawn Rice Norton. Dawn is an avid home chef who has been decorating cakes and making gingerbread houses for years. She often donates her creations to charities and libraries, and she does a lot of work with the Lions Club. So we appreciate all of the work that she does in those efforts and directions. I also want to acknowledge my colleague, Mina Jane, who's behind the camera today. She will be our videographer. And I am recording this event and I will post it to YouTube. So if you want to go back and take another look at something that Dawn showed us, or if you know somebody who missed it, you all will get the link to that video later today. And before I turn it over to Dawn, if you have any questions or issues with technology, please use the chat to connect with me and I'll do my best to troubleshoot everything. And you can ask questions if they're immediate. I'll try to interrupt Dawn to ask them. And if there's something that can wait, I will get to all of them at the end of the program. So with that, I will disappear from your screens and I will turn it over to Dawn. Thanks for being here, Dawn.
Thank you. In the effort of disclosure, I'm not a home chef. I'm a physical therapist, but I do this for fun. And that's why it remains fun. To do it for work, I don't know. But anyway, Mina asked me to do something on Valentine's with cakes because we did a gingerbread thing at Christmas around the winter holidays. And it was fun, so we thought we'd do it again. So today I have a variety of stuff here and we'll see what we can cover. The first thing, I have a small cake and I just made it small because, you know, in the interest of time. And I just wanted to cover a little bit about frosting techniques. This is smooth. It was smoother before a little incident with the ice this morning, but I do a thin, what you call a crumb coat. So you just take a very thin layer of frosting and put it around. And so it gathers up all the crumbs and things from your cake. If you cut it to level it or just the edges are a little crummy. And you let that set for a bit. You know, a few hours. And then I do another layer of frosting and smooth that out. And the way I get it very smooth is you take your spatula and you dip it in some hot water, very hot water, you know, sink hot, you don't have to boil it. And then you just smooth around like that. And I'm not touching it because I would be unsmoothing it, but that makes it very smooth, and wipe that off and then get some more hot water. And it makes it very, very smooth. And it takes a lot of the little imperfections. So if you wonder how bakeries do it, that's one way. That's how I do it. And it's worked for me. So, because it's always a challenge to get it smooth without all the frosting, you know, the little edges. So anyway, today I thought we'd start with the cake. And I want to show you how to make a frosting rose. We won't be using those on today's cake, but it's a good thing to learn. And some people look at the roses and think they're very, very difficult, but with a little bit of practice, they're not so bad. So I have here in a bag, I use disposable bags. I have some of the really nice pastry bags, but they're just so difficult to clean well. The frosting has oils in it and, you know, they don't clean well. I also have some different tips. This one happens to be 12, which is just a round tip. So the end is round. And that's going to form the center of our rose. This is a nail. Gotta get left and right here. This is a nail, not a nail you would build with, but an icing nail. and it has a flat top. You don't need to have one of these. You could do this in your hand. On the top is a piece of wax paper. That's very handy. If you're doing it in your hand, especially. So I'm just gonna take this and I'm just gonna have it straight up and down. And I'm gonna pipe just a bit of a column there with a little tip to it. So it's not big because we're gonna make sort of a small flower. And you wanna keep your tips pretty clean. So I'm gonna set that there while I get the other tip. That just forms the center. And you don't have to have all these tips. I've used just the connector and just use that to make the inner part, and it works well. This one is a petal tip, and this you kind of do need. If you're going to make a frosting rose, you do need the petal. So it has an upper part, or a thinner part, and a wider part. So when you're doing the petals, the thin part goes at the top. So we're going to take our little nail here. You want to get your frosting bag nice and tight. And the first thing you're going to do is tip down. You're going to go up and down and create sort of the center, so the bud part of the rose. You can make the roses different numbers of petals. In general, I like to do 3 petals, then 5 petals. It's a Fibonacci number if you're a mathematician type person. 1 and then 3 and then 5. And you can go 7 if you really want to make a huge rose. If you just want to make a bud, that's not bad. So I'm going to start where the little intersection is, and I'm just going to do a little bit of a petal. So it's just a squeeze, and you can see this is very stiff icing. So it's making that curl to it, which is how a rose typically looks. The petals aren't always so smooth. So there's the three petals. And then to make the 5, you just go between where those petals are. So 1, 2, and sometimes if you don't space it right, it's okay. You might not get all 5, 3, 4, 5, and it's okay. So there you have a frosting rose, and you can set that aside. If you want to use roses, you can take them and set them on a tray. So you can make multiple roses and set them on a tray and put them in the freezer for a little bit. And there you can actually pick them up and set them where you want on the cake. But I decided we could probably use for today's cake, when I was thinking about Valentine's, I should back it up a little bit. I'm thinking what with Valentine's? So to me, Valentine's is hearts and roses. And Mina and I were joking earlier, unless you're a 70s music fan, you might be Guns and Roses, or if you live in a different part of the country with more liberal gun laws, it might be Guns and Roses. But here we're going to do hearts and roses. So that's our theme today. So we have our cake. And what I'm going to use is actually some modeling chocolate roses. And we're going to use that same sort of technique. We're just going to form the pieces in a little bit different way. So what I'm going to do is just put a few roses here and a few roses on the top, and we'll tie it all together. So I'm going to show you how to make a modeling chocolate rose. And I know you had a chocolate class, so I'm not going to go too far into that. And then we'll do how to make a fondant rose. And then we have these little numbers, which are on a stick, and that's also fondant. So anyway, to the modeling chocolate. So you can make modeling chocolate, and it's really very easy. You can make it a variety of ways. You can either use candy melts, or if you really want a nice quality modeling chocolate, you can use whatever your favorite chocolate is. You can use the chips from getting the brand name. Begins with a G. I don't.
When you're showing close up, show it to this camera.
That camera. All this. So you can use a quality chocolate. It's going to be seen here. Quality chocolate. This is Ghirardelli. That's one of my personal favorites. You want to make sure it has at least 60% cacao, and it has some fats in it. I don't recommend Toll House. They don't melt down nice, and they don't make a nice modeling chocolate. But the candy melts or that chocolate, and you can use white as well, white chocolate. And you just mix it with corn syrup, So you melt the chocolate down in a double boiler. You can use a microwave, but you have to melt it just for a little bit and check it and melt it, check it. So no more than 10 or 15 seconds at a time, and give it a good stir. And as soon as it's starting to melt, stir in the rest of the chocolate and that will melt down. And you use about a 4-to-1 ratio. So four chocolate to 1.
You'll send us a recipe.
Yeah. So 16 ounces of chocolate to about 4 ounces of corn syrup. And the corn syrup is what keeps it soft. So if your chocolate's a little bit hard, you can add just that little bit more corn syrup. The thing with modeling chocolate is you want to work it a little bit, but not as much as fondant because it melts in your hands. Unlike M&Ms, it definitely does melt in your hands. So I'm just going to make a few pieces here, and then I'll explain what I have. So I'm going to have the center. That's going to become our center. So just a little nip. And it really depends upon the size of the rose you want to make. So just little, I'm going to do the 3 and then the 5. 2, 3, 4. And there's actually a different way to do this, which I don't care for because I like the quality that doing it this way makes it. But you can roll out the chocolate. You can roll it between wax paper. You can put a little bit of cocoa powder if you're using chocolate. If you're using white chocolate or colored chocolate, use a powdered sugar. But you can make these petals by cutting different size rounds. So this is actually from a flower making kit that I got that I thought I'd use, but I haven't so much. And it has all different things. I just brought a few of them. You can cut the leaf as well. But what I prefer to do is make the petals on my own. So I have 3 of one size and 5 a little bit bigger. So the same thing as with the same sort of technique. So you're going to make that centerpiece that creates your bud. So it's a little bit fatter on the bottom and a little bit thinner on the top. And you can see it's already melting because I'm a little bit nervous here. So you don't want to touch it so much. And the petals, I'm going to do that by making a round, like a little ball. And then I just squish it and then smooth it around. So you make a bit of a disc. So the same as you would if you're cutting the circle. But I like to do it myself. Just because you can, just make it more yourself. And it creates, as I said, that little bit of uneven because not all roses are absolutely perfect. So I prefer to do it this way. You certainly can do it the other way. Cut it out. But it's more stuff to buy that you don't need to buy. So I'm just flattening these out into little discs. I'm going to do the same with the 5 bigger ones. I'm just going to make slightly bigger discs. And I'm just squeezing around the edge. So I make the ball and flatten it. And then I squeeze around the edge because the edge is going to be what is making your petal. And you want those fairly thin. You don't want a big thick petal. So take it, roll it in a ball, squish it, flatten the edges, thin them out a little bit. At home, I have a whole set of fondant tools that I could use to flatten it out, especially on a hot day. I would tend to use more tools than fingers because the chocolate doesn't do well in the heat. But it's not very warm today. So we're good. So rolling, flattening, pinching, getting chocolatey.
Stop, drop, and roll for chocolate.
Yeah, this chocolate's always good. Huh? Ball, squish, then. All right. So to the assembly. Oops, I forgot one piece. I need that center piece. Just gonna take another nip here. And this one I'm going to do slightly differently. This is going to be a little bit of an elongated oval because it's going to create that middle petal. So just like the bit of frosting that come out the end of the tube, If the chocolate gets a little bit crumbly, don't worry, just knead it up a little bit. And sometimes when you make the modeling chocolate, it can look like it's all dried out and it will get hard. But if you knead it, you know, K-N-E-A-D, it will soften again. One little tip is you can also buy modeling chocolate. I got that at Michael's. I thought I'd try it. It's not so bad. It smells good. But if you don't want to make it, you can buy it. This is about, I'm going to say it's about $10 for this, but it will last you quite a while depending upon what you're going to do. So we're going to take our little base that I got, and top is the thin part. The bottom is going to be the base. So you're going to start the petal down the bottom, roll up over that, and just create that middle. So you can see there's a little bit of a petal there. And then you're going to take your 3 petals, 1, and I'm just sort of touching them lightly. I'm not squishing them because your rose would go. And if you don't like the way it turns out, you know what? Squish it and start again because you can reuse this. So now I have 3 petals around the middle, and it would look like that. So that would be a smallish rose. I'm going to take my 5 and I'm going to start in between the petals. 1, 2. We're going to turn these out as we're putting them. So we're sort of opening the rose. 3. Getting sticky. Guess I'm more nervous than I thought. 4. Flip it out a little bit. And 5. But you're going to notice at the bottom, you're building up a little bit of extra space. That's not a bad thing because you can use it to position the rose. If you want to thin that, you can. But then you can play around with the petals and you just spread them out and just open up that rose a little bit. But it makes a nice little rose and it's fairly simple. The same thing with fondant. Okay, with the dust.
That's my snack later.
You get the cake. You can do the same thing with fondant, but what I wanted to do was the cake. So let's go there for a minute. So I have pre-made some roses because it would take a while to make enough roses here. So I put the cake on a little bit bigger cake board. This one happens to be plastic. Not very decorative, but you can get a nice decorative one. There's different patterns you can make. You can cover it in foil or a colored foil. You know, you can put some decoration around the edge, whatever you want. But today I just went a little more simple. So I'm just going to add a few little just plops of frosting where I'm just going to put the roses. So nothing, just a little spot to stick it to. It doesn't matter which tube you use. You just want a little plop of frosting. So I'm going to take the roses. And I'm just going to place like 2 or 3 here. These are some of the roses of different sizes. So this one is only 3, as is this one. And this one I just did the center and a larger petal. So just like you have different size roses, you make different size chocolate roses as well. And you can just position them around whatever way you like. I'm just going to put those there for now. I'm going to put a couple up here for now. Just place them. Sure, a floral designer would have something to say about the way I'm putting them. There's no rhyme or reason. I never know how a cake is going to turn out sometimes until it's done, because I just sort of place and go. The other thing that I made are some chocolate petals. Where am I? Here. So same deal. I just squished them out and made an oval and then shaped them like a petal. You can also, again, you can use this, you can roll your chocolate and use the petal cutter. But I'm just gonna put those in there. You can also use green frosting. You can use green fondant. I'm just sort of sticking with the chocolate for this particular version. And for these, I did use some cocoa to roll these out. And so then you get cocoa on the surface. It doesn't affect the taste so much, and it will, as you work with it a little bit more, the chocolate will absorb back in. Oops, hands here. So I'm putting these out. If you want some color, as I said, you could use a fondant and make the same thing, or you could use icing, and this is a leaf tip. And the way you do it is you just, let's see, this is where I lose them. Here. You can, I'll just show you on the wax paper what it looks like. Leaf tips are easy. You just put it flat so that the opening is thin. You just squeeze it out. A little tip at the end makes a little leaf. All right, so we have our little cake. I'm going to put an edge on this. So for this, I'm going to use, you can use your big star tip here, but what I'm going to use is the smaller star tip, which I know I have here. It's here. So I'm going to take our rose tip back off. The thing about making flowers and piping leaves and things like that, you really want a stiff frosting. For frosting the cake, it's okay to have a very loose frosting. If we're doing the edge where it's not going to have very much detail, it's okay if it's a little bit looser. And normally I would have edged this before I put the roses, but I didn't. So anyway, so with the star tip, so it's just, it looks like a star when it's not covered in frosting. And there's different sizes. This one's about 15, 14. So the bigger the number, the bigger the star. So what I'm going to do is just, it's called a shell. So you squeeze, you get a little bit out, and then you pull it down. So it's sort of a rocking motion, squeeze. And as you're bringing it down, you let go. You let go of the pressure. So it's just up and down. Normally I would have this on a little bit raised surface and, you know, would spin like a lazy Susan. So I'm just going to make little shells around the edge. And you do want to keep your bag pretty tight because you want the frosting to come out. So as you frost down a little bit.
You can't actually see what you're doing.
Okay. Yeah, I'll put it on here.
No, it's facing you as opposed to the camera, that's all.
Well, this way I can do it from this side. So you're going to squeeze a little bit of frosting and then make that up motion and then come down. You're creating a shell. So squeeze and down.
Dawn, is the cake covered in fondant or is that a frosting?
Frosting.
I'm sorry, it's a frosting?
Frosting. Yep. Just smooth. Smooth.
And what kind did you use? I mean, I know how to make
make
buttercream. I don't know what else there is.
Yeah, the canned ones, you can use it and they're okay for frosting. And if you don't mind not having a lot of detail in what you're trying to create, then they're okay for a flower, but it's not going to give you the detail. So I tend to make my own and I'll send that recipe to Mina. I'm going to do the same thing at the top. So just a squeeze and a pull. Somewhat difficult from the side here, but we'll get it. This is not as fine as it would be, but it's good for the camera. Squeeze, up, down, and you get a rhythm after a bit.
It does take a little bit of practice. You kind of get a hand motion or a wrist motion that feels comfortable and produces the look you like. But I hosted a crochet workshop last weekend and I said to people, you know, it takes practice, get comfortable with it. And the other thing is that, you know, people won't notice what you think is a mistake necessarily. There's some forgiveness in this. We're all going to think yours looks perfect because you're the one leading the class. But
Yeah.
if we made one and showed it to somebody, they would also think it looked amazing. So don't be too hard on yourselves.
And when you start doing this and you look at some of the things in the bakeries, and the bakery cakes are absolutely beautiful, but as you look at them, you can pick up the little things, but the little spots. Yeah, every cake I've made, I know where every single mistake is. So we just have a simple little cake, chocolate roses. You can add some verbiage if you want. But that's the cake. We'll set that over there. The other thing I thought we could do for a treat is a large sugar cookie here. So what I've done is I've cut it's this size. So it's a large cookie. You can cut smaller ones, and I got this set at Walmart. Normally I would use like the heavy metal cutters, but I don't make a lot of hard stuff. I think this whole set was like 99 cents. I went looking for just one heart thing, and I thought, wow, I can get all different sizes. What a bargain. So I got it. So I'm going to show you how to do this little cookie here. It's really very easy. And you can see the stars. So we were just doing it with that star tip, and that's how you do it on the cookie. So I'm going to put that aside, and I'm going to take out one that isn't all stars. So this is what it looks like before you do it. And don't be afraid, if it has little bubbles or whatever, not a worry, it's going to be all covered. So our star tip is still in here. And I use regular frosting for this. You can use a royal icing, but the royal icing dries so hard. To me, it's not enjoyable. That dries, it will dry finished, but it won't be hard. It's still frosting. So what we're going to do, the star tip, just to make a star, is easy. You just put the tip there and give it a little squeeze. So it's all individual stars. And I'm just going to go around the edge. And the same thing, it takes a little bit of practice, but it's a squeeze, stop, pull up, squeeze, stop, pull up.
And Dawn, if somebody's having trouble at that last piece, getting the frosting to break off from the tip, do you have any hints on that? Is the bag tight enough maybe, or?
It's all in letting the pressure off before you pull it up. So, and it could be the consistency of your icing as well. If it's too stiff, then it might look a little, you get that edge to it. If it's too soft, you won't get a lot of good definition. So it's a fine line with the stiffness of the icing. But again, when they're all there, you won't really notice that some of the stars are imperfections.
I haven't done cake decorating in a long time, but I seem to remember when I did it, to release the star, I would maybe push down into the star a little bit and then lift the tip up. Am I seeing you do that too?
You can do that. Sometimes that messes with the clarity of the star.
Okay.
It can make it a little bit blurred.
Okay.
It's not a nice sharp star, but this is not something that we need a nice sharp star for. So this is pretty forgiving. If you do a very nice cake, and if you happen to be using stars on that, a little bit different thing. But I hold the tip just slightly above the surface, give a little squeeze, and it's really in the letting go of the pressure before you lift it up. So when it's slightly above the surface, then the icing is going to connect you to the surface. So you don't really have to go down into it. It's going to come up to you. If that makes sense. So we're just going to go ahead and do some stars here.
And again, lots of practice. I'm sure you'll have a very willing audience to eat any of your test products.
Yeah, and this cookie, I haven't tried this recipe before, and it puts a little lemon in it. I'm not sometimes a rollout cookie fan because it takes too much time. And sometimes I don't have a lot of time. But I wanted to try this one. And the lemon is just making such a nice smell to it. It's not your average sugar cookie. And I think it's a grandmother type recipe. I seem to remember my grandmother's, she was quite a baker. Her cookies had a little dash of lemon to it. So I have high hopes. My hand is a little bit slippery from the chocolate, so. And you want to have the other thing, and it might be part of the pulling away thing, is when you're doing star tips, the position of the bag is straight up and down. So different tips and different techniques and different things you want to do. Like when you're doing the petals, you're on the edge. And as you make the petals, you're coming further out. You know, you're tipping your bag further out. So the middle ones are more like this, and then more like this, and then the outer ones are done this way. But for a star, you're straight up and down to the surface. So that makes a difference too. If you're slightly off center or tilted, it won't make a nice star.
Dawn, we've had a couple of people ask if you'd be willing to share your cookie recipe.
Sure. It's not mine. I stole it off the internet. Not stealing if it's publicly posted, and it
Exactly.
is. So I assume that's what they intend people to do with them. Share them. I tend to make more cakes than cookies anyway, but you know, sometimes the kids complain they want a cookie. Yeah.
I bet the lemon gives it a nice flavor too, if it's not overpowering, just a little hint.
Yeah, it's not too sugary. So here we have our little cookie. And I will show you how to make a fondant rose and rosebud, and that's what I put on the other cookies. So that's probably a good segue into that. But we're going to set that right there. How are we doing on time? Oh, we're still halfway. Good. So let's look at fondant for a second. Fondant doesn't, and you can make your own. I tend not to, because, well, time, laziness, technique. But you can buy, if you're just going to make a little something, you can buy these little baggies of fondant. When you get it, make sure you give the bag a little squeeze. It's like picking fruit. You know, it's got to have the right texture. Just make sure the whole thing's soft and it's not an older bag. And you can get different colors. This one's white, so you can color it any way you like. When you're coloring fondant, I use a paste coloring, and this is just a Wilton color. You can get this at Michael's. You can get it at Walmart.
If your fondant gets hard, how can you soften it?
If it gets dry and hard as a rock, you tend to be a little out of luck, but you can heat it up a little bit. You can also knead it. So, you know, kneading it will, and I'm just going to pause a second here and get the chocolate because I don't want the flour to be brownish. I want it to be its appropriate color. But you can get that in virtually any color, and they even are starting, they've had them for a while, colors that are metallic, colors that are, you know, glittery, you know, any color you can imagine. If Michael's doesn't carry it, you definitely can order it. So this happens to be red. And red's not a bad color to buy because red to make is can be tricky. So the darker the color you're trying to create, so things like in the black, the navy blue, the darker green, red, it's hard to get that color done well. And you have to add a little paste and knead it in and add a little more. Definitely don't use the watered, you know, the drop food coloring, because that will add far too much liquid and your fondant will be sticky. So I'm just softening it up here. So it's pretty pliable. It's sort of like a Play-Doh. That out of the way. So same thing with the rose. You need your middle in that one petal. And then the 3, the 5, the 7, depending upon what you're going to put up there. So I'm going to do maybe a 3 and a 5. So I'm doing the same thing I did with the modeling chocolate. I'm pinching a little bit off and just setting them there because I'm going to roll them into balls in a second. So 3 of one size, 5 of a slightly bigger size, and that one part for the center that's a little bit elongated. So we got the center, we got 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, and then our other petal. And again, you can make different size roses depending upon what size petal. So we're just gonna squish these out a little bit. This is gonna be the center part. So that's gonna be, so the center part is less of a petal shaped thing and more of an elongated oval, if you will. The one petal in the middle. Then the base is gonna be fat on the bottom, thin on the top, to create that bud. And then I'm going to create the petals just as I did with the chocolate. Roll, squish around, thin out that edge. It's just like if you picture petals of a rose, if you scatter petals at Valentine's Day, perhaps, it's the same sort of thing. So you're making it look like a petal. Roll, squish. And the edge.
Dawn, do you find one easier than the other to work with, the fondant or the melted chocolate?
Fondant's definitely easier to work with because it doesn't melt. The chocolate melts. And if you, what's that?
Sorry, somebody came in unmuted, but I just muted them. So.
If you use a white chocolate, you can color that as well. So if you want colored modeling chocolate, you can buy either white chocolate or white candy melts. And again, paste. The thing about chocolate, if you're using chocolate, melting chocolate, don't get water anywhere near it because that will cause it to seize up, and that's very difficult to recover from. And so you empty it in the basket and you go buy more and do it again without the water. But water will cause melting chocolate to just be unusable. Also, you want to be careful not to heat the chocolate too hot. So if you're microwaving it, as I said, I like to use a double boiler. But if you're using the microwave, you have to be very, very careful not to overheat it because it will instantly just be a big, big mess. Sometimes you can recover from that by adding a little bit of shortening. So just some Crisco and mix it in a little more. But sometimes that totals it as well. So you have to be careful. Don't over melt it. Just keep an eye on it. 5-10 seconds, stir, 5-10 seconds, stir. I don't like to do it that way just because it's more annoying than anything. You have to keep stopping and stirring. On the pot, you can watch it. So we have our center. So again, I'm gonna start down low and I'm gonna bring that up and around to create that center petal. Sure, everybody's ready to do this now. The 1, 2, 3, right? Oops, sticking to my finger. So I'm gonna start with that petal joins and I'm just gonna put 1. And as I'm doing this, you can stretch it a little bit, but you put the bottom on the base, give it a little tug, and just squeeze it slightly. Don't squish it, or you're going to be doing it again. So there's the 3, and then I'm going to do a 5. So I start where the petals join on 1, and I do 1, 2, and I just put the petals on the outside. Some people like to tuck them inside the other petal because they said then it looks more like a rose. I don't know. I haven't really spent a lot of time looking at a rose to see if that's the way the petals go. But I think that when it's together, I have no idea. It looks like a rose, then it's a rose. So this one ended up a little squiggly here. But again, you want to spread the petals out, open up that rose a little bit. And that's a little bit bigger rose because I used the bigger petals. And for this, I'm going to put it on the cookie. So I want to take that bottom off. And normally I would let this sit for a little bit and firm up a little, but we don't really have that time luxury. So I'm just going to cut without cutting my finger. That extra little bit, and that can go back in the pile to be used for something else. And I'm going to set that somewhere, maybe down here, on our cookie. And you don't have to decorate your cookie, but we did. I have some green fondant, so I'll show you how to. You can either, as I said, roll it out and use your leaf cutter. But if you don't want to buy multiple things, I'm not much of a gadgety person. I like to just do it. So I'm going to take 2 little nips. I'm going to roll it around a little bit. Nips, that's probably the issue. All those nips. And I'm going to squish it and make it sort of an oval. And then make it, pinch the tip. You can create your own. I mean, that looks like a leaf. Looks like a leaf to me. Put that one there. Again, I just made a ball, sort of an oval. Then I squished it, pulled it out a little bit, made that tip. And any of this is just playing. But the good thing about this is if it's not what you want, just squish it. Do it again. And so I'm just going to stick that beside there. So you have a little rose, and you can add some more. You can make it more of a rosebuddy kind of thing like the other one and put multiple ones on there. You can put a chocolate, we have that chocolate rosebud. You can put that in there. But that makes a nice cookie. And I wanted to talk a little bit about presentation. Don't be afraid to like jazz it up and make it look like, wow, you must have spent an awful lot of time there. So I'm gonna move our little cupcake for a second. So here, this is a little, actually a candlestick. It was 99 cents at Michael's. I tend to troll through the stores and say, oh, wow, cool. And this is just a little plate, it's a paper plate. You could set that on there. Do yourself a favor and maybe use a little bit of glue or a little double stick tape so it stays. But set that on there. And it makes, without all this plastic around it, it makes a nice little presentation. And you can put a cupcake, or we can put our cookie up there. And, set that by somebody's plate with dinner. Oh dear, happy Valentine's Day. It looks good. Yeah, done. Drop the mic. The same thing with a cupcake. We have a cupcake over here. Same thing. Just set it on there. You can put some poof, and I'll show you the poof here. I don't know what you call it, paper shred. Poof, you can do whatever you like. This I'm not really going to go over, but I wanted to show you as far as like presentation. This is chocolate bark, and I put it inside one of the heart shapes and let it harden, put it in the freezer, and then took the cutter off. So it falls off the plate. And I just used some of the paper and I set it on there. And these are just strawberries that I dipped. But I mean, that's a nice little dessert for a Valentine's dinner. And it will go over well. If you like white chocolate. I don't. I like chocolate. Doing okay here. I wanted to show you these. I don't know what made me think I could do this. But they were sitting on the counter. We have a huge bag of these silly little Tootsie Pop things that belong to Bentley. And I thought, wow, what can I do with those? Because initially I was going to do a cake pop with it, but I thought I could use these. So these are fondant, and they come with a stick, which is very handy. So if you wanted to put it in a cake, you could just stick it down inside. You could cut the stick, and I'll show you, put it on a cupcake. But I'll show you how I did those. So I took the mini Tootsie Pop, and I did leave it wrapped just because I think the Tootsie Pop itself with the fondant next to it, I think eventually it probably would slide off. So the only thing that I did do was I cut the top bit off just so it's only got a little bit, it's still all covered and twisted, but it would be difficult to shape the rose around that kind of a shape. So I just cut that off a little bit. I'm going to set that there, and I'm going to use a white fondant. We'll make the white one. So again, the same thing with the fondant. I have a large quantity of white that I do a variety of things with. And it lasts a fair amount of time if you keep it really tightly covered. But you really have to keep it covered. And you can knead it back up. This is a little bit stiff. It's like really stiff marshmallow is really what it is. It's marshmallow based. I don't care for the taste of fondant. So you were talking about using modeling chocolate versus fondant. As far as taste, I think that the modeling chocolate definitely would taste a whole lot better than fondant, but some people do enjoy the taste of fondant. I'm not one of those people, but you know, that's me.
I'm gonna take up 5 more minutes and then we can do some questions.
Yep. So I'll finish this up. So again, the same basis. The flour, the cookie, the pop is going to form our base. So we don't have to make the little flat on the bottom and bigger on top. So you want to get a big enough piece of fondant to cover that. And I was talking about cake pops. You can do the same thing. If you know how to make a cake pop, and that's really just make a cake, squish it all up, mix it in some frosting, form very hard balls, and put them on a stick. Before you start using them, definitely freeze them. But you can do most anything. You can dip that in chocolate and then use the modeling chocolate to create the rose around it. But for us, we're going to use some fondant. So this fondant, I'm not thinning as much as I would the petals just because it has to cover this. So I'm just going to put that over the top, squish it around. Don't have to worry about it being very, very smooth. And if a little of the paper shows through, it's okay because it's going to be covered with petals anyway. This one is all covered, so we lucked out there. So that's going to be our base that we're going to make our petals on. So you're going to start with that same bud one. So you're going to make that, I'm going to roll this a little bit, get it soft, make that long bud one. So to form the center of that other white one is. Oh, form that center. So it's a long oval. I'm going to take the pop. I'm going to start at the bottom. I'm going to pull it slightly. You don't want to tear the fondant, and then roll it around. And you make that nice middle. So now I'm going to make the petals, same thing. I'm going to roll, and I'm only going to put 3 on this one. You can certainly do the 5, 7, whatever you want. But I think that would make, this is only 3 here, and it's a pretty big row. So I don't think, and it started only this big. So, I think 3 is enough for this sort of thing. So I made the ball. I'm going to squish around the edge here. It's, joining fondant to fondant. It's usually good to wet it slightly. So I would tend to maybe dip my fingers in the water a little bit and wet that, but it should stick because this is pretty malleable and it's pretty thick. So there's one petal. Got your petal shape here. I'm just placing it on the edge. I'm going to hold that with that finger, and then I'm just bringing it across with this finger. And one more. Edge. You can make a whole bouquet. You can use a full-size Tootsie Roll. It's going to create a pretty big rose. And again, just placing that on there.
Dawn, how do you store fondant? Does it have to be refrigerated or stay at room temperature?
You really don't want it refrigerated. That would get pretty stiff. Oops.
That's what I thought.
You want it at room temperature, but tightly closed. I
Okay.
tend to wrap it in plastic and put it in a baggie because
Okay.
you really want it closed. It lasts a long time if it doesn't dry out. So these you can put either in a little vase. I just have this little mini mason jar, so I'm just going to kind of stick them in there for the moment, just because it holds them up well. But while that dries, you definitely want it supported by something. You can stick it down in a box if you make a hole. What I did was put straws in a cup, just stuck them in the cup, and that held it up nicely. So we're not going to get to this other stuff. I'll just show you the cupcake. So this cupcake, you get these fancy swirls on the cupcakes, and they look so wow. And they're really easy to do. I have a very large star-tipped tube, and you just, for that one, all I did was I went around the edge, and you just come up in the middle. You know, bakery makes it look like they spend days on it, and they don't. Not to minimize bakeries. I love bakeries because I don't have to make this stuff. But you can do this at home. It's fairly simple. A few easy supplies. You can buy these tips. They're a couple dollars each. You don't have to go buy a whole set if you're not going to be doing a lot of this. But think of what it is you want to do and get that particular tip. And eventually you end up like me and you have boxes of them everywhere. But there's a lot of videos too on YouTube and Pinterest and things like that. So it's not the mystery that it maybe once was.
And not the investment either, because you can do a lot of the same kinds of things with the fondant. So
yeah, I was talking about the rose on the stick earlier. Actually, I might not need to cut that. You can take that stick and you can put it right in there, add a couple leaves, put your little presentation on, you're good. Anyway, so we wanted to field some questions.
So we've been asking a lot of them.
Recipes. So we want the cookie recipe and the frosting recipe. Anything else? Oh, maybe mention the modeling chocolate recipe. That's just 4 to 1, but I can certainly put that in.
So Vijaya, you unmuted yourself. Did you have a question?
Yes, I have a question. So I usually make a whipped cream frosting, and after doing the crumb coating, am I supposed to keep the frosting in the refrigerator because it gets watery very quickly? You know that.
Yeah, whipped cream frosting is difficult to. You need that refrigerated. Yes. Long story short, yes, you need that refrigerated. I have a Crisco-based frosting and with various extracts, and it's really very tasty. But everybody has their favorite frosting and whatever works for you. If you're going to use a whipped cream-based frosting, you might have a little more difficulty trying to do a rose or things like that because it just doesn't get stiff like the other frosting might.
So there are 2 questions that are related in the chat. One is, what supplies do you recommend? And what are the plastic bags being used for the tips?
Okay, the supplies would depend upon what you want to do. So if you just want to make the fondant, you really need minimal supplies. You need, a little bit of fondant if that's what you're going to do. And then as you saw, I was just rolling and shaping, and it really only required fondant. If you want to create a rose out of icing, then you need a round tip and a petal tip. I use a connector so that I don't have to use multiple bags. So this is just a plastic connector. And these you can buy you can buy single ones, you can buy 3 to a pack. They're a couple dollars. The bags that I use, I don't have one that's not filled, but these are just decorator bags. So they come in a pack again, Walmart, Michael's, any of the craft stores. They're just, they're like a tube. They come to a point and you cut the point off. This one, I put the tube directly in it because I don't have a coupler of that size. It's a larger tip. This bag, this pink bag, the coupler part goes inside and then you put the tube on the outside and connect it with there. But you can easily pop off different tubes. So if you're using multiple, like the rows, you need 2 tips if you're using a tip for the middle. So it's easy. You just pop it off and reuse it. You don't have to have, a dozen bags sitting here.
And if anybody were to go into a Michael's store or just search online, there's so many different products out there, but you can get a sense of what different things do and how they work and, sort of look at them and think about it before trying something. And the fondant's a great way to start with minimal supplies, just to see if you even enjoy spending this much time in the kitchen making beautiful things.
And the modeling chocolate is just as easy, and you can buy it. You don't have to make it, but you can make it. So if you make it out of candy melts, which you can do, these go on sale for about $2.50 for a whole bag. And this is, I want to say 12 ounces. So you'd use a quarter of that of corn syrup. So 3 ounces. See, your math does come in handy later. I think it won't when you're doing it, but it does. When you put the corn syrup in, just warm it up a little bit. Don't put cold corn syrup in hot chocolate because it'll seize the chocolate.
And just a final question. I know we addressed this early on, but I think I've forgotten already with all the excitement. Does buttercream frosting work for all of this?
Yes, buttercream works really well, and that's what this frosting is. And you can actually use butter in it, and many people do. I don't happen to like so much the butter flavor of actual butter, and you really have to whip it in. You have to get it nice and soft and make sure it's fully incorporated, but you get those clumps of butter through it, and it's just not enjoyable. That's why I tend to use all shortening with just a touch of butter extract. And then I use, like a teaspoon of vanilla, because that's your base. And then I just put a little touch of almond in it too. And it just has a nice sweet, it doesn't taste lardy. Sometimes if you use too much Crisco, it's a lardy flavoring. I used to do catering when I was in high school and college. I was, helped out my mom where she worked. And we tasted some of those wedding cakes, and some of them were just, by the end of it, we knew where we wanted to buy a wedding cake and where maybe we didn't. Some were more lardy, and some of them were delicious.
Well, it's just about 11. So we're going to wrap this up. Thank you so much, Dawn. This made me want to work with fondant, and I'm not a kitchen person, so that you're very inspiring.
It's like Play-Doh. You can do anything with it, literally anything. Cookie cutters, anything.
I think that's fantastic.
Hands than gadgets, but that's me.
Well, I like the tactile experience in that. So
I'm not too tactile, but this isn't bad. It's not sticky.
It looks
keep washing my hands.
It looks easy to work with, but doesn't leave residue on your hands. So
yeah, the chocolate is difficult. You have to lay off it a little bit and let it set as much as you can and handle it less. Less is more with handling with the chocolate.
Yeah. Well, thank you to everyone who joined us this morning. I hope that you go out and make some of these things yourselves. And if you do and you want to share some photos with us, feel free to do that. We will be sending you a follow-up email with some of the recipes we've talked about today and a link to the recording, which will be posted on our YouTube channel. And we're also going to send you a survey to ask you what you thought about today's program and what else you'd like to see us offer. So it's okay, Dawn. We've gotten tons of positive responses and thank yous already. So no worries. And with that, I will say thank you again to everyone who's come. And thank you, Dawn. It was wonderful to have you. We'll have to see what holiday comes up next that requires some decorating.
Coming up. There's all kinds of flowers you can make. Flowers.
Excellent.
All right. Thank you.